6078 at 3800 Langston Boulevard. Mr. Ross Lichtenhouse is representing the owners. You can start, sir, with your 8 minutes and tell us about the project.
Thank you very much. Lori, good to see you again. It's been a while. The property in question, 3800 Lee Highway, is a 5,500 square foot strip of mixed office and retail. And if you know this area of Arlington well, it's right across the street from Cherrydale Hardware Store, which is kind of an interesting section of Arlington. It's a bit of no man's land in terms of access to Metro. Metro's quite a ways away. This strip of office and retail doesn't have access to surface parking. And part of the issue with this property since its acquisition years ago, and it was constructed in 2015, I should say, so it is relatively new. Part of the issue has been chronic vacancy, and that over the last couple of years has been the argument that we made. And DRA was kind enough, generous enough to reduce the assessment last year, but the current assessment of $2,461,500 is about 10 to 12% increase over the prior year. When the situation at the property has certainly not gotten any better, and if anything has deteriorated. The 4 individual units themselves, as of the date of valuation, only one was technically occupied. And if you look at the packet provided to the BOE that's in front of you, our analysis starts on page 28 of 81. I'm not going to walk through this page by page, but the main issues that we take here are how the vacancy and rental rates have been addressed. And although we didn't spend a tremendous amount of time focusing on the capitalization rate, I think what makes this a very difficult property to understand how to value is the fact that while yes, this RPC code is technically designated in land records as a condo, it was condoed in traditional fashion for a strip of commercial on the ground floor that's part of a larger mixed-use project. There are residential units above this strip of retail, these 4 units, and they are for sale condos. So this strip of commercial on the bottom floor, and I say retail, but it's really retail and office or general commercial. This was designated as a condo in the land record books, but is very much operated as its own individual entity, as though it's a smaller kind of general commercial property. So the cap rate that the assessing office provided or applied to this property was 6.7%. Given the fact that this is a mix of retail and office, and the vacancy has been chronic over there over the last few years, I do feel that a different cap rate could be applied to this property. Again, the current cap rate for condo, which is applied to medical office condo, which is a very, very different product, is 6.7. This is, in my opinion, much more aligned with general commercial or a retail strip of 7.3. So again, the main issues here that we've got, about a 12% increase in assessment over the prior year. When this property has been chronically vacant as of the beginning of the year, we only had one tenant occupying the units. We did have one other tenant, I should say, that was paying rent, was vacated, and that's Chase Bank. And so they'll only be paying for about another year. But overall, if you were to drive by that property as of the date of valuation, you would see lights on only in the Burger Billy's joint. So we're requesting that the Board of Equalization consider a couple of things here. One, an adjustment to the income based on what's actually being achieved at the property. The current NOI that's being used for valuation purposes, or what's being presented here by Lori's team, is approximately $168,131. The actual NOI reported for year-end 2024 was only $83,862. And I will point out that on page 40 of our analysis, you'll see the I&E survey that calculates to an NOI of 126,511. I don't know what was wrong with the survey when the formula was calculated, but if you were actually calculate it by hand, and what's been reported on the owner's internal income statements, the actual NOI reported at the end of 2024 was only $83,862. So about 50% of what's being used. And I understand that we're grossing up this direct capitalization analysis, but I'd like to point out that the rents being used, although they're averaging a little under $37 a square foot. One of the most recent leases that were done at this property for a tenant that ended up vacating, but prior to the end of the year, I was only paying $12 a square foot. And this is not managed by, kind of a mom and pop shop. I mean, this is managed by an institutional grade property manager and leasing brokers that know what they're doing. But this is just a very, very challenging property in an area of town that traditionally doesn't have the type of foot traffic, and for these particular units, doesn't have adequate surface parking at street parking. And so the tenants have struggled with generating sales off of the necessary foot traffic. And so we're asking for the board to consider a change to any number of factors, one being the actual rent that's being achieved. And we've grossed up rents for our analysis at closer to $21 a square foot, which is in line with some of the recent leases that they've seen. And then would also ask if it's easy enough to reclassify this to a different capitalization rate, even using Lori's analysis that she's presenting today, because I just truly do not think a strip of retail or blend of retail and office like this, even though recorded as a condo, operates or trades at a 6.7% capitalization rate in the market. So thank you all for your time. I appreciate it, and certainly be happy to answer questions after Lori's presentation.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ross, please.
Good morning, board. Thank you, Ross. So first of all, just want to recap that last year I did go out and inspect this property back in April, and so I have been on site. There are 10 parking spaces in the back, and there is street metered parking out front. So I wouldn't say that this doesn't have parking. It actually, compared to some of the other properties, it has parking out front for like a quick drive up and leave. And then there's covered parking in the back. What I did want to make note of, yes, this summary page is a little, that there's no consistency showing from 2021 all the way to 24, for consistent NOI, GPI or whatever. What happened was in 2021, I needed to reconstruct that. The owner reported actual rent, and then on top of that, double hit it by reporting rent loss. And so that's why you have a reconstruction for the 2021, so that the rent was added in for the gross potential. And then, as you can see, it was subtracted and it was put in its proper category, which was vacancy. Then we move on to 2022. They did not use our INE. They just submitted a financial statement. Okay, so I had to reconstruct that. And after discovering it through last year's appeal, once again, they only reported the actual and not the gross potential. And you notice that they didn't show any vacancy. And I'm showing vacancy. How does it look? Okay, it's money in and money in, and an equal money out. As for 2023, it's being reported correctly. The GPI is being reported correctly, and so is the vacancy. Why is this reconstructed? Because of the admin expense. They included leasing commissions, meals, and entertainment expense. We don't consider those typical annual operating expense. So that is why that was reconstructed for 2023. Now we move on to 2024. So we're looking at the GPI. It's a huge difference there between 23 and 24. Why is that? Because they're actually using that substantially low rent that they're reporting. They're the $12 a square foot that they're reporting. They're using that in the GPI, and they're also using that in the reported vacancy. So that's why you have a huge inconsistency there between those years. And so when I was looking at this, I'm going, wow, how do we determine this? So I looked at the rent roll and analyzed what was going on the last couple of years. I took a look at what's also happening down Langston Boulevard, similar property types, and I used the median rent that was being reported for this particular property. And then and by the way, I did the same thing for the January 1. When I was valuing this in January 1, I said, okay, what's the typical rent here? And then I discounted it for January 1. That GPI is including a discounted rate. And that's why it doesn't look too far off from column F, the test column. All right. And so the only thing I would make note of. At first, I wasn't going to include a test column, but then I realized our vacancy rate was wrong. It's not 5%, which was in the January 1. It's actually 8%. So I thought it was important to test the 8% in there. And so using the proper vacancy rate, I tested the GPI, giving it the discount. And then if you look at the expenses, it's still hard to figure out what is a reasonable expense ratio. So I was looking at the last 2 years for more guidance. And so that's what you see in column F. As for the cap rate, we had a historically large number of commercial condos sell this past year. And upon review, another review, we feel that our cap rate of 6.7 is well supported. And as you can see, the test column, despite including a higher vacancy rate, it still shows a higher value. Keep in mind the test column, I discounted the rent, I increased the vacancy, and we're using a well-supported cap rate. And so I believe that our January 1 assessment is correct. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Questions from board members? Mr. Yates.
To be Pelling, are the units, condos owned by the tenants or the occupants or collectively?
They're owned collectively. It's all under one tax account code, under one condo regime. All 4 units are owned by one individual who owns them as an investment.
I have a question for the county. So if there's 4 units, and the appellant mentioned that as of January 1st, they had 1 tenant in place and a second one that was paying for over a year. So in my mind, we got 2 tenants, one just happens to be absent, they're paying. But that would be 50% vacancy.
Yeah, they're using a different rental rate there. So one tenant is paying market rate, and then whatever there was tenant occupying in 2024, just not the entire year. And
Right,
so
okay, well, hold on, hold your thought there. So
okay,
what was the occupancy on January 1st? Not 2024.
that up on there. January 24. Let me look at our rent roll analysis.
Seems like this is something you should know.
January 24.
No, 2025, I want.
Yes, she wants 20. She's looking at 24.
I want 2025, January 1, 2025.
I know, I'm calculating it. If you could give me a moment, please. Because part of it, so early, you want 25 December, you want January 1, 25.
Correct.
Okay, give me just a moment, please. 16 plus 0.038. Let's find that by. Comes out to 49.1.
% vacant. Close
Yes.
enough. Okay, so where do you account for that in your calculations?
So I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening as of they could have re-signed somebody up at the time, so I'm looking at this as January 1. And once again, this is an annual
Hold on,
assessment,
Hold
so
on, hold on. So I know that you're looking at as of January 1, and you knew as of January 1, it was 49%, which again is probably rounded to 50% vacant. So why aren't you taking that into consideration, regardless of what they
I
did after?
did.
Where?
So, like I said, I used the median rent at $40, and then I discounted it. When I do these, I discount them based on 1 year, 1 month, which was 0.083, and discounted it by that much, which did I state? Well, I stated it on page, I think it was page 2. I'll go back and page 2. Yes, page 2, I discounted it $3.43 square foot for the excess vacancy. It's stated in the comments.
Okay, other questions? Mr. Mendez?
Yeah, just for the appellant, you mentioned some difficulty in leasing these spaces. Do you know what's contributing to that?
What we've been told by the leasing agents, as well as in, I'll call it exit interviews with tenants that have broken leases early, it's the lack of foot traffic and sales. There's just not enough foot traffic, and although there is, you've got 10 spaces behind the building and a few metered spots right there in front. I mean, this area just does not generate the type of sales that businesses need to operate in those units. So they just simply can't make their businesses work there.
Got it. Thank you.
Anything else? No? Okay. Ms. Roskin, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
Yes, ma'am. So once again, looking at both the January 1 and the test column, I did discount both of those, show a discounted rate for the GPI. Keep in mind also the test column, I used a lower pass-through than what was being reported when you compare E and F. I used a much lower pass-through because I think it was reporting like one-time income. And I feel that our expenses are in line, and I used a correction of 8%. When I looked at the final number, it was more than what the January 1 value was at $2,461,500, which I recommend confirming. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pinhouse, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Yes. So as we've discussed here at length, this has been chronically vacant. This is just a very, very difficult strip of retail commercial on the ground floor to generate enough sales to support businesses. And it's been over 50% vacant for the last few years. And it's vacant, still a tremendous amount of vacancy as of today. And again, this is being treated as a condo the same way that you would treat a medical office condo, which is a very different product. These are 4 units of mixed retail and office combined as one investment, so should be looked at in that way. And again, we don't feel that the profile of this property, both in terms of the chronic vacancy as well as the asset type itself, has been reflected in the assumptions utilized by the department in developing the assessment here for this property, and would ask and implore the Board of Equalization to consider adjustments to their model to reflect the deterioration in value that this property continues to experience on a year-over-year basis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Okay, it's just among the board. I don't know. I think the last statement that he said that the chronic vacancy isn't being considered properly.
Yeah, you have 5 metered spots in the front of the building. You have to have employees in these places. They've got the 10 in the back. There's nowhere to park, nowhere to go to Chase Bank.
Mhm.
I also agree with the idea that yes, it's condoed as a legal structure, but it's not. It's not operated that way. It's not. I have big concerns on that.
I agree with you, Mark. The cap rate would be what, 0.6 higher to 7.3%. But I think, Mary, your questioning was the kicker there, the vacancy rate. So with the almost 50% vacant rate, wouldn't we apply 28%? What does the guideline say for that? Do we know? Because I think that what they're using 5 on the initial assessment and 8 on the test. So would it be?
Yeah, nothing below. I mean, that's.
Yeah.
Especially 50% of 4 units. It's not 50%. 50 units. You know,
So I ran a test. I mean, I don't know if it's correct to bump that up to 28%, but I did do that and it was very close to the appellant's number. And I also bumped the cap rate up by 0.5, not 0.6. And that got me to about 2.2 million. So kind of all over. I'm curious to know what you guys.
yeah, well, I think it's high. I don't think it's certainly any higher than last year.
Right.
I don't think an increase is justified.
I think
Where-
I think the 8% vacancy that she did not apply should be applied. And maybe it's a vacancy at the bottom, but I don't think she should cap it. I mean, there's still condos, you know, there's still commercial condos. And they decided to do that for some reason when they established them, so classified as that.
Good point.
Yeah, I would agree.
Good point.
What, did you come up with the number? If you did something?
I didn't do anything at the bottom, I just did the 8% vacancy, but
2,368,612.
2,368,612.
Yeah, but I think that
That's
is
from
still,
that's from the original. I didn't have the test.
like I said, I don't think it's
No,
unless we can do something below the line to do that.
And I
would
think
be
you-
wanted to go back to that.
I think you need to go back. They were bought new as one unit. The fact he bought, and we did that to a building. We condoed. We had someone buy 3 out of the 5 floors. Yeah. He bought the whole property there.
I think we do anything below the line is probably being close to this anyway.
All right, so
All right.
are you okay with?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
But I just saw justification. It's saying we just didn't go to last year. We did it because of the vacancies.
All right, then I'm gonna make the motion to reduce the assessment to 2,162,400, which is last year's, based on the uniqueness of the property, the chronic vacancy, and the fact that if we adjusted to 8% and then did something below the line, it's probably gonna come out relatively close to that number anyway, so. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Mendez, all in favor? All in favor, aye. Opposed, none. Okay, it's unanimous. The assessment's reduced to last year's number of 2,162,400. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Ms. Roskin again and Mr. Hart. And so just so let the minutes in the record show that we're going to hear the next 2 cases together. So that's RPC 35003839 and the Economic Unit 35003884G. BOE case, it's 119 and 120. So Mr. Harmon, you can start with, well, I don't know how much time you'll need, but we'll start with 8 minutes and see how you do, and then we'll move forward.
Very good. Well, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, Lori, good morning. So this property is the Acadia at Met Park. The property consists of a 411 unit apartment building. It also has ground floor retail, about 16,000 square feet of retail space on the ground floor. The 2025 assessment for this property represents a 5.6% increase over the 2024 assessment. Now to start, the owner does operate this property as one contiguous building as it sits, both multifamily and retail. It's a similar situation to the prior case where the retail is legally established as commercial condos. However, it's all under common ownership, and the owner operates it as most other multifamily properties in the county are, as one entity, one set of books, combined financials. There's no way to separate out the income and expenses attributable to each of the condos and the multifamily, so it's all commingled together. With this, we did review it and appeal it as one cohesive unit, total building, resi and retail combined. Our combined appeal value for that property is $198,405,700. This compares to the total combined assessment for both the resi and the retail portions. That comes in at $215,595,500. Now with this, there's two issues with the assessment. First, the assessment overstates total potential rental income. The property reported total potential rental income of $16,355,045 for 2024. That's for the combined portion of the property as well. The assessment combined comes in $59,000 greater than what the property reported in 2024. Now, we're all familiar with the state statute regarding residential rental properties in Virginia and how it states actual income and expenses are to be used. We've seen this repeatedly in case after case that the county has reviewed. The county's imputed actual 2024 income or even below in some cases. In this instance, the potential rental income is $59,000 higher than the 2024 reported by the property. Now, I do want to discuss the cap rate as well. We've discussed the multifamily cap rates extensively throughout this season. I'll share my screen again to show there's really just no market data that supports what the cap rate the county has used. Of course, appraisal literature, you're supposed to look at sales in the market. You're supposed to look at surveys. The county alleges they've done this, but then when you dig into the data, it simply isn't there. So the cap rate on this property, it's a little bit higher at 5.66, a little bit higher than some of the straight residential properties we've seen. That's because of the blended rate, including the retail cap rate on that. So the blended rate comes out to 5.66%. That compares with the low end of the three surveys that the county states support their cap rates. And these are cap rates for strictly multifamily properties. This is representative of the low end, which is the best properties in the surveys captured by the investors in those surveys. These are all loaded with the tax rate, loaded with the replacement reserve rate that the county applies to their multifamily cap rates. So this is an apples to apples comparison. Now we could alternatively, we could unload all of these and have the same comparison. That delta between the 5.66 and the 6.233, that delta would be the same. It's just a matter of a choice if you want to load them all or unload them all. Either way gives you an apples to apples comparison. As you can see here, those three major surveys, again, have reached a consensus on the low end. It's interesting because we have dozens of conversations with investors in this product type each year in the market, and they're telling us consistently the same thing that these surveys are saying. They're saying the low end of the best new products in the county are coming in at this 6.233% cap rate. So there is a widespread market consensus that the best properties in the county will be valued by investors of this product type at 6.233%. You can see how that compares to the current assessment of this property at 5.66%. Now, how does that compare to what's actually transacted in the market? What has actually sold in the past year over the course of 2024? Well, these rates are actually low. If we look at sales, for 2024, we see a sale in the same submarket, 655 South Columbus, was at just over a 6.3% cap rate. We see 2121 Westmoreland over a 7% cap rate. So, those properties may not have been the best and newest and best amenitized, but they're still showing that they're higher than these surveys. And that makes sense. They're not the best. They're not at this low end. They're a little higher. Same thing with this property. This property was built in 2015. It's not the newest. It's not the best. We've chosen to be super conservative in our assumption on the cap rate. We've actually just built it off of this low end. We've said, we'll assume it's one of the best. We'll go with the 6.233 and then make a blended rate to account for the retail. To date, we have not been provided evidence from the county to support this cap rate on this property of 5.66%. We do ask that the board make an adjustment to this property's assessment to account for, the year-over-year increase of 5.6%, which we're just not really seeing in the market. A large portion of that 5.6% year-over-year increase is, again, due to the use of a non-market cap rate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Roskin for the county, please.
Thank you. Okay, so once again, this is being heard together. So I used, when I took a look at this, the combined income and expense statements, and these are being valued separately. One of the things I did ask, I sent out an email to Mr. Harmon requesting a bunch of information on their expenses, and I never got a response back from him. And I also asked for a copy of the full rent roll, and his response was to use the matrix that was included in the income and expense statement. Well, if you go to when I looked at the matrix, I actually, when I tested this, I actually used income that was less than what was being reported in the matrix. So I'm like, okay, he says that we're using higher rent. I'm not. I'm using what was I'm actually using less than what was reported in the matrix. And so then but they did provide a, in the income and expense statement, they did provide a rent roll for the commercial properties. And so I was able to determine what the GPI was for that. I was also to ascertain pass through, which they don't separate that out in their income and expense statement, but I was able to extrapolate it from the rent roll that they provided for the commercial. And so once again, we're using the 5% vacancy for the apartment and the 8% for the commercial condo. We feel that our expenses are in line with the property. And as for the cap rate, our cap rate is well supported. Now, think about this. This property is 1 block away from Fashion Center Mall. It's 1 block away, or maybe 2 blocks away from Amazon headquarters. It's next door to Costco. There's only one other place in the county that could be equally or better, and that would be in downtown Roslyn. So you have 2 premium locations in Arlington, Roslyn and where the subject is sitting. They're well, this subject is premium. It's located next to ample shopping. You've got the Whole Foods that's nearby. You've got Costco you can shop at. You've got the mall you can shop at. You have the Metro, which is only 2 blocks away to go to for access. You have the airport down south that's really close by. I mean, this is a premium location. Our cap rate is well supported. When you look at the sales that were included in the guidelines and you look at our per unit rate of $494,000 per unit for the apartment, we believe that this cap rate is well supported. As you can see in the test column, the total value tested out a couple million higher than the January 1 assessment. I'm finished. Thank you. Open for questions.
Thank you. All right, questions from board members? I will start with Ms. Ruskin. Since you brought this up, you indicated that you sent an email asking the appellant for information on expenses, and you didn't get a response on that?
Correct. And it
Hold on.
turns,
Hold on. My question is, what's the date of the email?
the questions were mailed out June 10th, and I sent a follow-up June 17th.
Okay. Mr. Harmon, any reason why you didn't respond to these?
Yes, we weren't contesting expenses on this at all. You know, we felt that they had adequately accounted for expenses. And it was a fairly extensive list of that would require, you know, an extensive amount of research to find the answers to. So since we weren't contesting it, you know, we said there's no need to do all this legwork because we aren't contesting expenses.
Okay. All right. Moving forward, however, I think when the county asks you for something, if that's your reason, it'd probably be good just to give them that in a response that would end the follow-up, and then not to have the testimony that they asked you for something and you ignored it. Just a thought. Other questions? No? Well, okay. Ms. Roskin, if you take a minute to wrap it up.
Thank you. So once again, I did a test, just trying to extrapolate the GPI and the income, or the vacancy and the income, since they combine everything into one, and these two properties are valued independent from one another. We feel that our January 1 value for the apartment is well supported, and also the commercial condo value for January 1 is well supported at a combined total of $215,595,500. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Harmon, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Yes, thank you. So the current assessment NOI comes in just under 65,000 above what the property reported for 2024. We know that's inconsistent with how the county's assessed similar multifamily properties in the county this year. That's partially because of the stating of potential rental income. When we review these, we do apply the code section of Virginia law that relates to residential properties, and we use the actual income on that. Now, I agree with Lori, this is a premium product, premium location. We've applied a premium cap rate. We went to the low end of that cap rate range listed by those surveys. Now, if you do have the county guidelines that list the sales, it's very interesting to look at those sales. This is on page 12 of the guidelines. You'll see one sale has a per unit value anywhere near this property. This property is assessed at $525,000 per unit. Looking through the sales, there's nothing. There's one in the past 2 years that even came close to that. Nothing, everything else is well below that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Okay, it's a move board. We can discuss certainly together, but remember, they're two separate cases and we'll have to have two separate motions. So where is everybody?
I think it's just a cap rate issue. I mean, look at the GPI, the EGI, it's identical within $8. And the expenses that the county's using this is almost $350,000 less than, more than the county is using. Yeah, I don't have any problem with this assessment.
I would agree to the appellant's point at the end about using the actual numbers in column E. In column G, their pro forma is even higher than that. So I don't understand that. But yeah, there's continued growth year after year. I think it looks good. So I have no problem with the assessment.
Yeah, I agree. And as far as comparing it to the others in the study, and this premium property, someone has to be at the top of that pile, and this is probably the one.
So on case 119, I'm ready for motion.
Let me confirm the assessment on that. 203,047,000.
So
I have a motion, a second by Mr. Yates. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. On the first case, RPC 35003839, the county is confirmed at $203,047,000. On the second case, where is everybody similar? Okay, on case 120, someone like to make a motion?
I'll motion it.
I'm sorry, I couldn't get it up. Go ahead.
Confirm.
So your motion is to confirm the county at 12,548,500. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion is second by Mr. Mendez. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous as well. The county is confirmed on the latter case, movie number 120 at $12,548,500. Thank you. And the last case for Ms. Ruskin is RPC 16039-034 at North Kent Street. And I just want to remind everyone that you got updated the summary report yesterday, a new calculation. So Mr. Harmon, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about this property, sir.
Yes, thank you. So this is the Spectrum Theater. It's part of the Roslyn Plaza site plan. The county has proposed a revised value that we don't disagree with. We're in agreement on that revised value. I do appreciate the county's review and revision and thank them for that. So with that, I have nothing further. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Ms. Ruskin.
No, we're in agreement with
All
the
right.
value at 1,376,400.
Okay, any questions from board members? We can move to a vote. Okay, then I will move to confirm the county's revised number, which is actually a decrease of 1,376,400. Okay, we have a motion and second by Mr. Penaranda. All in favor? I oppose. Okay, the county's revised number of 1,376,400 has been confirmed. Thank you both. That was much quicker than I thought it was going to be. Okay, thank you, Ms. Roskin. And then we have Ms. Shuttlesworth joining us. There we go. Okay. The fifth case on the agenda is RPC 35005022 at 801 15th Street South. Mr. Harmon, you can start with your 8 minutes on this property.
Yes, thank you. So this is the Cortland National Landing Apartment Building. I'll direct, if you'll be so kind as to direct your attention to the appellant documents beginning on page 26 of the county's board case. This is where we lay out the facts of this case. Here's the summary. Essentially, this property sold in an arm's length, widely marketed transaction for $104 million, $104,250,000 in July of 2024. Arcadia professionally marketed this property, and Cortland was the best bid they received. The sale price is reflective of fair market value under Virginia law. It was offered for sale by one who desired, but was not obliged to sell. It was bought by one who was under no necessity to have it. Now, looking further, this contracted closed sale price of $104.25 million. We did learn that this value, the buyer determined that value based on information provided by the seller during due diligence. So part of that underwriting value to get to 104.25 was based on the telecom contract in place at this property. So there were a couple of telecom contracts, primarily for Wi-Fi at the property. During due diligence, and let me back up and say, part of the current owner's business plan for a lot of properties that they manage is to bring Wi-Fi service in-house and manage that themselves. That then becomes a revenue stream for them and plays into their valuation of these properties. So during due diligence, the buyer asked the seller, for the contracts of the telecom contracts. The seller told the buyer, hey, here are the contracts. They're expiring in the next 12 months. They'll be up for renewal. So the seller took that initially at face value, but they went further. They then went to the telecom companies, Verizon and Comcast. They said, hey, can you confirm that these contracts are up in the next 12 months and are about to expire? The telecom companies, their standard policy is they don't discuss contracts with anybody but the counterparty to the contract. So unfortunately, the buyer couldn't verify the authenticity, the accuracy of these contracts that were provided by the seller. And why that matters is they came up with this purchase price of $104.25 based on the assumption that those contracts were expiring in the next 12 months. And they would then be able to bring that service in-house and begin earning income. Upon closing, the owner, the buyer, went back to the telecom companies, got the contracts, found out they had been renewed in 2022 for 10 years. So instead of the contracts expiring in the next 12 months as they had underwritten the property, they learned that they actually have another 8 years remaining on the term. So the buyer went back and, they had already closed on it, so nothing they could do there. They went back and they looked at their numbers again, and they said, if we changed our assumptions to not have that income stream, how would that change our valuation of this property? They found that the net effect of losing that income stream, essentially the income that they would have gained minus the cost of providing that service, essentially came out to about $2.25 million. Had they underwritten the property, knowing that the telecom business could not be brought in-house for another 8 years, as is the case, they would have underwritten the property at $102 million. Now, we did provide support for this fact pattern from the buyer. That begins on page 28 of the appeal. Now, we don't have a full year's financials for this property to evaluate the assessment, but how we kind of looked at the assessment was knowing the sale price and knowing the parameters of the sale. If we assume the county's income and expenses are accurate, in order to get that to the sale price of $102 million, all you have to do is apply a cap rate right at the investor survey consensus. Comes out to a loaded cap rate of just over 6%, assuming the county's NOI is accurate. That gets you to that sale price of $102 million. So it's not far off, but it is greater than that widely marketed, contracted arm's length sale that occurred in July of last year. Given the recent sale price of the subject property in conjunction with the new information that came to light post-sale, we respectfully request the board reduce the value to reflect the actual sale price of the property, less the value of that lost income attributable to that telecom contract, and reduce the assessment to $102 million. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shuttlesworth for the county, please.
Yes, good morning, board. Good morning, Jordan. So this property, this is a high-rise apartment building with 298 residential units and 430 square feet of commercial space. This property is located within walking distance to the fashion center at Pentagon Mall and within walking distance to the metro. The amenities include rooftop deck, indoor pool, fitness room, business center, and residential lounge. Significant renovation work was conducted on the property between 2020 and 2022. These renovations included kitchens, bathrooms, common areas, HVAC systems, and roof. This property did sell in July 2024 for $104 million, $250,000, and it is currently assessed at $106,417,100, which essentially implies a 2% increase in value since the day of that sale. We were trying to determine if that 2% increase in value was justifiable. As the board can see from the summary sheet, we really did not have much information to work with. We were missing 2023 INE, we were missing 2024 INE, and we were also missing the actual rent rolls as of January 1, 2025. When the property changes hands in the middle of the year, typically the new owners who decide to appeal the assessment, they at least submit the partial INE. We understand the full year worth of financial information is not always available. This really helps us a great deal to extrapolate the potential rent and operating expenses. In this case, we have not received the partial 2024 INE. It will also help us tremendously if they submitted the actual rent roll as of January 1, 2025, so we could better estimate the potential rents and see what the physical vacancy was as of January 1, 2025. The appellants did not provide any information that would prove that the value of this property has not increased by 2% since July 2024. When we look at the 2025 pro forma, the board can see that they are agreeing with our numbers that we used in 2025 evaluation. They imputed exactly the same potential rent, except they combined the retail and apartments. But when you look at the subtotals, they pretty much agreed with all the numbers we used. They just contesting the cap rate here. We did our best valuing this property as of January 1, given the lack of partial 2024 INE and the rent rolls. We look at the similar properties and rents they are being charged at those competing properties. And if you ever wish for perfect comps with the same value location, similar style, similar effective age, and similar unit count, we have them. So comp number one I looked at was the Instrada, and comp number 2 was Joyce on Pentagon. Even when we looked at the 2023 INE data for Instrada, we quickly determined that the rents we used for the subject were understated. I actually had a chance to inspect both of those comparables in the past 2 years because we did receive reviews. Based on the rents being charged on these properties, I think we were very conservative in our projections. Another thing I would like to point that Instrada is currently assessed at 429,000 per unit. Joyce on Pentagon is assessed at 456,000 per unit, and the subject is currently assessed at 357,000 per unit. I'm open for questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Questions from board members? Okay, any final comments, Ms. Shuttlesworth?
Thank you. So as many times as we have requested the rent rolls from Wilkes artists and we did not receive them, this is one of those cases where the actual rent roll was a critical piece for us to forecast this 2025 rents, potential rents. The two comparables are within less than 1 minute walk from the subject, and they charge rents that are significantly above the rents we used in our valuation. In respect to the telecom agreement, by no means I'm not an attorney and I'm not trying to pretend like I am one, but I know that the buyer's board, it is the buyer's burden to verify and analyze all the existing contracts. And again, the appellants are not contesting our numbers. They are the only one thing they changed on the summary sheet was the cap rate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Harmon, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Yes, thank you. So this property did again sell in July of last year. It was a widely professionally marketed process, competitively bid. The best offer was accepted. That was at the $104.25 million. That assumption, of course, relied on the assumption that they could bring that telecom income stream in-house within the next year. That's how the buyer got to that 104.25 value. Now, it's unfortunate the county did not ask any questions about the sale, no questions about this telecom contract. We provided what we thought was adequate. It appears that it was adequate based on the lack of questions. This owner, between the data purchase and the data value, you can look on CoStar. We hear the county reference CoStar repeatedly. Vacancy went up. Vacancy's been increasing at the property since the date of sale. So, we weren't arguing against a 2% increase. We were arguing for the sale price. So I think that's the discrepancy here is the county saying, why are we wrong with increasing above the sale price? And we're saying, why is the sale price wrong?
Okay, thank you.
Vacancies increased. Thank you.
Thank you both. All right, it's just someone on the board. Typically I would look and say the sales price is certainly significant. However, I think the lack of the information given leads me to think that the information would make it high. That's why they didn't do it. And I think, I know Mr. Jordan loves to quote case law. I believe there is case law out there that if you don't provide the information, you don't have much of a leg to stand on to argue about the assumption, about the assessment. And I think Ms. Shuttlesworth did a great job. And then when she comes through and gets the comps of the other properties, and this is only at 357,000 a unit, I'm fine with the county's assessment.
I would agree. And again, I think it was a good argument by Ms. Shuttlesworth. The appellant is not contesting the county's numbers. They're just changing the cap rate. So, and the burden of proof is on the appellant. So I agree.
I just don't think it was met. You think different?
No, I agree. I think this is one of the cases that we've had much less information than anything else. So, because normally, like, maybe the sales price would justify. I don't think we have enough.
And especially in the final comments that, Mr. Harmon just said, and the vacancy's going up. And you can see on CoStar that's gone up, but it's not easy to do. I don't get why it wasn't provided. If it was provided, we would have a different answer here.
So I also I agree. My initial reaction was sales price, and then hearing some of the arguments, trying to find some of that in here previously, which I didn't. Yeah, the worst is the income was off by a couple million for over an 8-year period. They count on that extra income that's not there. I think they actually, I'm not a lawyer either. To me, they were misled by the seller. But it's a small percentage of the project and a small percentage of the income. Counties, and the fact I can't say other than that one reason that the sales prices should be any different. I agree. The counties, they did what they could.
Then I'm going to move to confirm the county at 160 million. Okay, second by Mr. Mendez, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? None, it's unanimous. The county's confirmed at 106,417,100. Okay, the last case on the agenda is RPC 160350001, 1401 Wilson Boulevard. Mr. Harmon, again, you can start with your 8 minutes on this property, sir.
Yes, thank you. So this property is one of two parcels that make up 1401 Wilson, the site plan at that property. Looking at the assessment history, there have been fluctuations. The county went up in, I think that was partially a reallocation. So while it did go down year over year, it went up year over year prior to that. There's been some fluctuations in it. Now, if you'd be so kind as to direct your attention to page 46 of the appeal, you'll see the facts of the case. This parcel, again, along with the other portion of the site plan, sold in December of last year for a combined $25 million, of which $15,597,045 is attributable to the subject RPC. The site plan was widely marketed by a professional brokerage, Eastdil Secure, and discussed directly with 50 experienced and qualified firms. The net result of Eastdil's marketing process was a single bid for $20 million for the combined parcel. This bid was the basis for the ultimate sale price of $25 million. Turning to the next page, page 47 of the appeal, you'll see an affidavit attested to by a managing partner of the current owner of the property. Going through this affidavit, you'll see further confirmation of the facts of the transaction, including the property was part of a broader partnership agreement where Goldman Sachs was the controlling partner. Monday Properties was the operating partner engaged to handle the Roslyn property. Goldman Sachs had the right to initiate a sale of the property. Goldman notified Monday Properties of an intent to sell the property. Goldman gave Monday Properties a right of first refusal at a purchase price of $29.4 million. This is when Eastdil Secure was engaged to professionally market the site plan to determine, is 29.4 the fair market value of this property? Let's take it to market and see what the reaction is. Again, that marketing process resulted in a single bid for $20 million. From this, Monday then used that as a starting point to negotiate a sale price with Goldman Sachs and ultimately arrived at $25 million. That transaction between Goldman Sachs and Monday Properties closed December 10th of last year. Next, on page 49, you'll find a list of the qualified bidders that Eastdil Secure approached about the sale and the responses provided by each of the bidders. Then on page 51, we've included the only bid received as part of that process. Next, beginning on page 53, you'll see the executed sale agreement. So this property was marketed for sale, returned a single bid for $20 million, ultimately sold for $25 million, with an allocation to this parcel of $15,597,045. Now, this is a fact pattern we've observed time and time again over the past few years. And in fact, we did just hear the Silver Diner site plan case a couple of weeks ago. That was the same fact pattern. The property, was marketed, went under contract for a fraction of the current assessment. We also look at the Roslyn Gateway site plan, just a couple of blocks away from the subject property. That property sold in November of 23, also for much less than the assessment at that time of that property. And the fact of the matter is, this property, this site plan has 500,000 square feet of office density tied to it. The county has changed their pre-pandemic office land from $65 a foot to $60. That is not where the market is as of January. The demand for existing office has plummeted. With that, the demand for office land, which is future office, has plummeted even further. We see this in sale after sale after sale, yet the county's land rates have not been updated to support this. The county hasn't even provided a land rate study for office land rates. They provided a multifamily one that heavily relies on pre-2022 sales. They haven't even gone through the legwork of providing any office land analysis. Now, along with that multifamily land sales study, it's important to note that those sales are heavily weighted to pre-2022 sales. Now, why is that important? Well, we know in mid-2022, the Fed began aggressively hiking interest rates. They went from historic lows near 0% to over 5%. As of the date of value, they were still at those rates. That seriously depresses the value of land for new development. And you can see that from those sales that the county's included in their study. The most recent two sales came in at an average of, I believe it's 51,000 per unit. That's the Ballston Macy's and 4420. Those were the two most recent sales, are at 51,000. The overall results get skewed by one sale, the RCA sale, which was an effective June 2020 sale. The county has listed the RCA sale as a November 22 sale, but that's just the closing date. If you look at that sale, it went under contract in June of 2020, and that's when the buyer took effective control of that property. Upon taking effective control and signing the contract, the buyer then took the property through the site plan approval process. So, that's really an effective control as of June of 2020 sale. Knowing that there's really no recent sales and no adjustments have been made to those pre-2022 sales. So that's how we get to this discrepancy between the sale price and the assessed value. The county's hasn't done a land rate for office land since the pandemic. It's not reflective of recent sales of office land in the county. The county's multifamily land study relies on 2020 sales primarily, especially the RCA outlier, which was a June of 2020 sale. Looking at the affidavit, this was marketed by a professional brokerage. It returned one bid at $20 million and ultimately closed at $25 million. Now, I do want to address, Annetta did send some questions over on this one as well. I do want to address that. So I had notified the county that I'd be out the week of July 4th, and that is when the question came in. Upon returning the following week, we received the county's confirmation almost immediately, right at the beginning of the week. So unfortunately, the few days I was given while I was out to reply to this was not adequate in order, and the county was aware that I was out of the office that week. We had less than a week to reply before we got the confirmation. It was just too tight. And then upon reviewing the questions, most of those were answered, if not all of them are answered in the documents. So there was a question about the relationship between the parties. If you go to, we included an org chart of the partnership that sold the property. The affidavit, so the org chart is on page 60 of the appeal. The affidavit that begins on page that I referenced earlier, that's included, that answers most of the other questions that Annetta had. So, they were questions that were already answered, provided with the information in the appeal. They were sent on the week the county knew I was out of the office on vacation with my family. We received the confirmation immediately upon my return. So upon confirmation, we have replied in the past after getting the county's confirmation, and we've been told we can't do anything with this. We've confirmed it. We cannot use this information. So, maybe it is best practice for us to continue replying as soon as practicable, even if the county can't do anything with it, just to avoid it being held against us. But based on our experience, the county doesn't use that information. It was included in the appeal. They did email us when they knew we were out of the office. All that information was already included. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Shelby for the county, please.
Yes, good. So I just wanted to respond to one thing. I was not aware Mr. Jordan was out of the office. I did not receive the automated reply message when I sent that email to him. We give 5 business days to for the appellants to respond. This case is heavily built around the sales, and Mr. Jordan did state in his write-up that the property quote unquote sold in December 2024 for $15,597,045. While this was one of so there are 2 parcels involved, which we are aware of that. And I try to verify the sale. As a matter of fact, I pulled out both of the parcels, not just the subject. I also researched sale information for parcel 160350002. I contacted the land records. There was no trace of the sale. There were recent transfers for neither of those 2 parcels. And this was the reason why I sent this email, because I was really confused. So that is my response to the email and the request for the information, which we didn't receive. And again, this is the site plan 429. It was approved in June 2014. The site plan is approved for redevelopment of 2 existing office buildings into 513,000 square foot of office, roughly 155,000 square feet of retail. And with that, I'm open for questions, and if Deidre or Chris would like to jump in, please do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from board members? Mr. Yates.
To the county, if you had been able to confirm the sale, would that have changed your thoughts?
Even if I was able to verify that sale, we still would use our uniform land rates. So more than likely we wouldn't. But it's still, just for the sake of our records, we would like to verify each sale, and we were not able to do so in this case.
Mr. Mendez.
Yeah. The appellant, what do you say to the sale not being able to be verified?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that,
Yeah.
Mr. Mendez?
Yeah, what do you say to that? The county's saying they can't verify the sale. You're saying there was a sale, you know.
So
Can you
they're
respond?
saying they can't verify it based on a land record being recorded. Not every sale has a land recordation. This property, if you Google it, you'll actually see there are several articles in the media discussing the sale. This was it was a sale between an overall partnership that the majority partner, Goldman Sachs, executed their right to sell the property. With that, the minority interest, Monday Properties, then took it to market and said, what's the value of this? We would like to buy it. Got that market data through Eastdil Secured's marketing effort, and they came up with the sale price from Goldman Sachs. And it does get, I believe it was an entity sale potentially. You can see on the affidavit, it goes through the names of the entities. You know, one parcel is held by Oak Hills Property Associates LLC, and this is page 47. The other is held by Nash Street Property Associates. So, you know, it wasn't a sale that was recorded in the land record. So that's why, you know, if that's the only way that a sale is verified, then, you know, it's missing a lot of sales.
Can Mr. Chicas
Sure,
respond?
absolutely. Mr. Chicas, you want to respond to that?
We do. It's the same listing, although there's no land recordation. There's also nothing listed in CoStar. There's nothing listed in the National Real Estate Commercial Listing Service. So I'm just not sure when they say this was highly marketed. It does sound like, and it would have been more useful with more time, but it does sound like this was a sale between the 2 owners, between Monday and Goldman Sachs, if I'm understanding the appellant correctly. And so it wouldn't be a market sale. That would be a sale between 2 minority owners amongst themselves. But the only thing we see that was listed in December of 2024 between Monday Properties and Goldman Sachs was a group of 7 distress sales. Wilson Boulevard, Fort Myer Drive, and there's 7 sales listed, but these were listed as a distress sale.
So this is unrelated to the Monday Properties Ralston 7 property portfolio. So that's just a red herring. This property, we did include the sale marketing efforts. That's page 49 of the appeal. You can see all of the bidders reached out to. That's the marketing efforts. I just did a quick Google. It comes up on LoopNet mentioning the transaction. You also see the first result mentions the sale December 18th, 2024. So, you know, it was marketed.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And
Mr. Mendez.
I just have one last question. The site plan looks like it's gonna expire later this month. Is the plan to just let it expire or is that gonna be renewed?
So I'm not certain. You know, I'd have to look. I'm not sure off the top of my head, Mr. Mendez. I don't have a firm answer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Hey, Ms. Shuttlesworth, if you take a minute to wrap up.
Yes, thank you so much. So we assessed the site plan just like we did assess another site plan with the county. We did perform extensive land sales analysis. Our land rates are supported, and I recommend confirming the subject's 2025 assessment of $449,100. Thank you.
And I just wanted to add that the county does rely on sales being recorded in the land records. That's how we review our sales. We would have considered anything that was recorded, which is why Annette performed the research that she did to see if anything was recorded in the land record for both parcels. But we do look at sales that are recorded. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Harmon, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Yes, thank you. So essentially, we have two opinions of value. We have the county's opinion of value that is based on no office land study. It's based on pre-pandemic land sales. They have provided 0 office land rates. This property is primarily office, over 500,000 square feet of office land with 0 support. Value just pulled out of whole cloth. The multifamily land portion of this property that the county's valued is based on 2020 sales primarily. No adjustments for interest rate changes, construction cost changes, or market sale changes, as evidenced by the most recent 2 sales. On the other hand, we have a sale. We have an affidavit attesting, swearing to the facts of the sale, beginning on page 47, by the managing partner of Monday Properties. That outlines the sale process. We've included the bidding process. 50 bidders were contacted and spoken to by by Eastdale Secured, and the responses are there. They paid a premium to the best bid received through that marketing effort. So on one side you have speculation, the other side you have facts. We respectfully request that the facts win the day on this one. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so it's among the board.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Mendez.
Yeah, so, it seems like the sale may or may not have happened, and if it did, it probably wasn't an arm's length transaction. They mentioned that 50 brokers, or 50 bidders were contacted. But the county's saying they can't find it on CoStar, so, that's a little bit questionable, but it still is a site plan. It does expire at the end of this month, so that's very interesting to see what they do with that. But as is, I think we've seen this before, and we've traditionally just said, hey, it's a site plan, they can cancel it, they can let it expire, etc. So maybe if they let it expire next year, we'll give that sale a little bit more attention. But I think as is, I would stay with the county's number.
Mr. Yates.
It's an entity sale. It would not be recorded.
Okay.
And I've done that. I've actually marketed properties and then sold the entity. There's tax advantages. I've looked at the list of, what the competing comments, the comments from bidders. Yeah, they contacted them. They responded. I think they're there. How they came up with that final price, I have no idea for that portion of the entity. But there's comments from, he says 50, but I don't know if I didn't count them. This is why they're not bidding. No one said a price. So where they came up with the price, I don't know. So does that nullify it being arm's length? I don't know. But the fact it's not recorded doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, parties can make agreements, like you said, entity agreements, escrow agreements, sole types of agreements that, but until it's closed and recorded, you know, and I haven't found anything. I went to land records also, there's nothing recorded in any process. So, yeah, I don't think we have any.
It's an asset of the entity. You sell the entity, doesn't get reported. The asset doesn't change the county.
That makes sense.
But I don't know where the price came from. But I can't believe Goldman Sachs says, geez, we're gonna give you a hell of a deal.
Substantial decrease.
Oh, yeah, that too.
But looking at the comments concerning where they talk about the market, they talk about the competition, just the current financial situations. That's why people didn't embrace it. I don't know how they came up with the price. That's the only thing.
I think we're in agreement. I'm gonna move to confirm the county then, 31,449,100. Second.
Second,
Second by Mr. Panoranda, all in favor? Aye, opposed? 3-1 without Mr. Yates. The county's confirmed at 31,449,100. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes the agenda for today. Does anybody have any other business we need to discuss? No? Okay, that being said, then we will adjourn here at 10:17 a.m. Reconvene next Tuesday, July 29th, 9 a.m. virtually for board members and everyone else. Thank you all.
Thank you all.